This video was taped in El Salvador and Honduras in July 1986. The words are exclusively those of the people of these two nations. Many people could not be filmed because of fear of reprisals by death squads, security forces, or the military. Voiceovers have been used to protect the identities of some individuals. Fear has not silenced these people, though. Perhaps through this video, their voices will be heard.
Una clara explicación pide el pueblo con razón. Una clara explicación. Porque mientras más riqueza hay más miseria y pobreza. Sabe el pueblo que era esa, aquella noble promesa. Sabe el pueblo que era esa. Era guerra la riqueza, no guerra el pobre en la mesa. Madre, déjame luchar. Madre, déjame luchar. Madre, cómo te adoro, porque quiero a mi pueblo. Y tú me enseñaste a luchar por él. Tú me enseñaste a compartir mi pan, a compartir mi amor, a compartir mis sueños. Yo quiero
significant factor happened in El Salvador for the past 8 years. We can say now that the conditions are really excellent, and they indicate that we are moving in a direction which, with some optimism, we can believe that the stagnant situation which we have been living through for this past 5 years has somehow changed.
Now, it's a very correct question to ask whom to believe. I mean, who's right? What's the truth about this country?
One of the reasons why we have come here is because of the repression that we live under as civilian population. This repression has been against everyone, even if people were all people, or women and children. One of these types of repression is bombing against the population.
Porque no tenemos ni a dónde esconder los niños y viene el avión tirando y los niños.
We fear for our children because of the firefights that there are. Sometimes we don't have a place to hide the child. So planes can come above and shoot, and we don't have any place to hide the children.
Now, in 1979, El Salvador was condemned by every major international forum on human rights as one of the most serious human rights violators governments in the world. Now, it's funny that having been condemned in 1979 because there were 750 people assassinated for political reasons, in 1985, in which 1,500 people were assassinated by political reasons, we are a working democracy and a model for human rights respect.
Ya que el Comité de Madres nació el 24 de diciembre, nació al dolor y al sufrimiento.
The Committee of Mothers was founded the 24th of December of 1977. The Committee of Mothers was founded from the pain and the suffering of the mothers who at that time were looking for their children. The mothers were desperate and anguished at that time because the death squads were taking their children from their houses in the middle of the night. And these mothers went to the trash burning places, they went to the National Police, they went to the Treasury Police, and no one gave them an answer. This is the way in which these mothers found each other, and they spoke together of their pain and of their children, and these mothers decided to go to the Archbishop, and they went to Monsignor Romero, and they asked what consolation he could give them, and it was Monsignor Romero who told them to unite, and to assume one voice in order to be heard. It was in this way that the Committee of Mothers was formed, and now we have more than 800 members. We have young mothers, we have older mothers. These young mothers who tie themselves to our committee have lost loved ones, have lost husbands. The mothers feel strongly that while there is a government incapable of opening the clandestine jails, our voice will never be silenced in the streets demanding justice. What keeps us going is the emptiness that we feel for our children and our loved ones who have been taken, who were taken alive, and up to now we know nothing about.
Here in El Salvador, we have an example. The greatest example, Monsignor Romero, was a Christian, show us through his actions, through his life, an example of how to deal with this problem. He not only was here to announce the good news to everybody, but also to denounce, to make a Christian denunciation, and to take out all that is bad, all that is in our way, all that acts as an obstacle. He went with us, and as a result, he gave us spirit. He gave us that ability to go on. And it's very important to have that example here because, for instance, in my own experience walking the street, I have seen youth being machine gunned to death by the soldiers. I have seen the result of massacres of women whose throats have been slit. And you know, to continue this war runs risk. And you know the consequences could be very grave, but we have with us the gospel, so we continue.
The reason we came here is because where we were living, we could no longer live. We couldn't keep living here because the troops never gave us any time to live. They were killing children, killing people. We felt forced to leave there.
When the war began, we didn't think anything was going to happen to us because the soldiers would go by where we were and they never did anything to us. But then the situation got worse. Then the death squads began to come and they began to take out people who they said were suspicious, who might be organizers. And then after that, operations started coming in. And then after the operations, planes started coming and bombing. And so then, when the operations would enter, they would take apart our homes, our houses, and destroy them. And then, so maybe, we would replant the cornfields again. And this time, they would leave them alone long enough so that we would get the harvest. And so we would harvest our corn, and then we'd hide it. And then they would come in and look for where we had hidden it all over the mountain. And if they found it, they would burn it then. And so we were left bearing hunger until we could get a new crop out. We wouldn't be eating, and they are always looking to kill us. We would run, but some people would always be killed. Young men, but also little children. Children this tall would get shot.
Hermano, dame tu mano. Vamos juntos a buscar una cosa pequeñita que se llama libertad. Esta es la hora primera, este es el justo lugar. Abre la puerta que afuera la tierra no aguanta más. Mira adelante, hermano, que es tu tierra la que espera, sin distancia, sin fronteras, que pongas alto la mano, sin distancia, sin fronteras.
The university denounced all the different injustices that were committed against the people. It is for this reason that a series of bad things began to happen to the university. They accused us here of being an arsenal of the guerrillas. With this as its basis, there was another intervention, the third time, the 26th of June, 1980. This intervention is even more cruel than the two before. The whole university was surrounded, and they began to shoot indiscriminately into the university from outside. The result of this are many dead, many wounded. We don't have an exact figure. The students and the teachers had to take refuge in the buildings, and they stayed that whole day until dawn of the next day, just lying on the floor, until the International Committee of the Red Cross came in to get them out of here. So nobody was able to register the number of dead or wounded. Besides, the whole university was sacked, and many buildings were very much destroyed. The books from the Central Library were taken outside and burned. What they tried to do was destroy the infrastructure of the university. They never imagined that even without an infrastructure, we were going to survive.
The message that we will give to students in the United States as students here is that they identify with our struggle, that they understand that our struggle is real and that it's ours. We have a world that doesn't allow us to develop ourselves as young people, that does not allow our parents to live without worrying about what might happen tomorrow. That children here are developing in a society that is rotten, corrupt. And we as young people, as the vanguard of the Salvadorian society, have the duty and the moral commitment to achieve the improvement of our society. The message for the North American student is specifically that they feel that our struggle is theirs, that they pronounce themselves against the North American intervention in El Salvador, that they demand from their government, as we demand here, that the repression and the fear cease.
Sabes que en el mundo existe tanta desigualdad social y te aferras al sistema como una balanza total.
We can say that the birth of our union came from the deepening of the crisis. This crisis has deepened because of the decision taken by the democratic Christian government under the advisement of the North American administration. It is our understanding that the U.S. Embassy is managing things here. We are conscious that the behavior and the politics of Duarte are heading toward a greater spiral of violence and suffering of the people.
The Office of Tutela Legal, which means legal aid, is an office of the Church. It watches out for human rights of people who could be affected in different ways. Our principles come from the gospel. Our principles also come from the principles of international humanitarian law, such as the Geneva Conventions and the Charter of the United Nations. The area that Tutela Legal works is the area of the fundamental rights of man, life, physical and moral integrity, and minimal or basic legal rights issues are the areas in which the majority of cases come to our office. For example, family members come to put forth their denouncement of people who have been indiscriminately captured, assassinated, disappeared, or are victims of bombings. The administration of justice in cases involving political prisoners or people accused of political crimes just does not exist.
Paz en el mundo, en la humanidad, el joven de ahora no puede vivir.
Since the war began in the very beginning of 1980, thousands of displaced persons began arriving here to the Archdiocese. With a population of 4.5 million people, this means that some 30% of our population have been displaced by the war.
En la humanidad, el ser joven, señores, inspira maldad. Que paz en el mundo, en la humanidad, el joven de ahora no puede vivir en paz. Que paz en el mundo, en la humanidad, el joven de ahora no puede vivir en paz.
For us, perhaps the most important thing during this whole time has been the pressure and international solidarity. And this is because even though the government wants to maintain its democratic image, this is its most weak point. When we can make it known on an international level that this government is not democratic, then I think we will be able to gain something really important in terms of the struggle against injustice here in this country. When the organizations of human rights, such as the Non-Governmental Human Rights Commission and the Committee of Mothers and churches, denounce the policy of forced displacement, denounce the bombings and the massacres in the countryside, denounce the inhumanity involved in refusing to allow the people to remain on the land where they were born and raised, then these organizations as well begin to be seen by the government and the armed forces as groups against the government or as enemies.
Qué triste se oye la lluvia en los techos de cartón. Qué triste vive mi gente en las casas de cartón. Viene bajando el obrero, casi arrastrando sus pasos, por el peso del sufrir. Mira que mucho ha sufrido. Mira que pesa el sufrir.
The main military installation is in Palmerola, which is next to the city of Comayagua, the ancient capital of Honduras. There are approximately anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 U.S. soldiers that have been stationed there for the last several years. The other military installation is in the port of San Lorenzo, which is right here. Supposedly they have an air base there from which planes take off towards several directions in Central America. At the same time, there is a contingent of around 250 Marines on the island of El Tigre, which means the Tiger Island. And they have a radar installation there which can sweep all of the Gulf of Fonseca and also some of Nicaragua and El Salvador. They have also built an airport, an airstrip in Hamastran, which is up in this area here that it does not appear right on the map. They have also built or improved a dirt airstrip up in El Aguacate, which is up in this area here. They have also just finished building an airstrip in Mojoron, a dirt airstrip also. They have also built an airstrip in Cucuyagua, which is over in this area here. Let's see if I find it right here. They have also improved airstrips in San Pedro Sula and in La Ceiba. Previously, they also had a presence here in the Trujillo area, where the Center for the Regional Military Training Center existed, and at which they had been training Salvadoran soldiers. And those are the military installations in Honduras.
In Honduras, our fundamental problem is misery. It is not an imported misery, but rather it is the product of many years of injustice, of social, economic, and political injustice, which have been accumulated. We have 4.2 million people living here, and of those, 65% live in extreme misery. We have 160,000 campesino families without land. We have in Honduras that out of 1.2 million people that can work, only 300,000 have a job. All that is a very long chain which provokes violation of human rights.
Because we feel that the main problems in Honduras are poverty, illiteracy, malnutrition, bad housing, bad health, and that has nothing to do with any foreign government. These are our own problems. They are not to be dealt with military solutions, but they should be maybe thought of as social and economical problems.
Lo trágico es que
The tragic thing is that
la necesidad que deberían tener los hondureños
and the necessities that the Hondurans should have
es contar con un gobierno
is that they should be able to count on the government
que centre su actividad
which would center its
en
activities
tratar de resolver nuestros problemas.
in trying to solve our own problems.
Sin embargo,
However,
la prioridad fundamental
the fundamental priority
no la dictan las necesidades del pueblo hondureño,
is not dictated by the necessities of the Honduran people,
sino que las necesidades políticas del gobierno de los Estados Unidos.
but rather by the political necessities of the government of the United States.
Imagínense ustedes que nosotros tenemos en la actualidad 3 ejércitos en el país.
Just imagine that at the present we have 3 armies in our country.
Tenemos el ejército hondureño, el ejército norteamericano y los Contras.
We have the Honduran Army, we have the U.S. Army, and we have the Contras.
¿Por qué se está permitiendo la militarización de Honduras?
Why is the militarization of Honduras being permitted?
La pregunta no es tan fácil de responder.
The question is not very easy to answer,
Pero tiene que ver
but it has to do
con el hecho de que el gobierno y militares hondureños
with the fact that the government and the Honduran military
ven en los proyectos contrainsurgentes de Washington
see in the counterinsurgency projects of Washington
un gran negocio.
a very large business.
Entonces, yo
In supporting the Contras, the United States is not really interested in Honduras, but rather they are interested in their own personal interests, and all of the people of Central America have to suffer. After 4 years of military occupation by United States troops, Comayagua has changed its way of being. Prostitution has increased, and violence has intensified itself in this city. We repudiate the foreign policy of our country because we consider it to be a servant policy of the government of the United States.
Conflicts in Nicaragua and El Salvador they have brought to Honduras a lot of problems. It's not only the problem of increased militarization in Honduras, the increased U.S. presence, or the presence of the Contras, but also for Honduras is a problem of the increased number of refugees that come to our country. Now, with the approval of this aid for the Contras of $100 million, which is more than the official assistance of the United States, the military assistance to the Honduran army, this constitutes for us a real problem. I think that not only the approval of the aid is a very hard blow to the possibilities of a negotiated solution to the problem of Central America, but I think that opens the possibility of military escalation as well as an increased conflicts between Honduras and Nicaragua.
And we have decided never stop denouncing human rights violations and protesting against the presence of North American troops and foreign troops in our country.
Voy llegando a mi pueblo y vengo llorando, porque yo sé muy bien lo que está pasando. Me voy imaginando al compa y Genaro, sudando bajo el sol por 4 centavos. Esta es la realidad de nuestros países, no esperes que finalice, porque no va a terminar. Latinoamericano, llegó la hora, y esta gente explotadora la tenemos que
What my country needs is help. Help so that we will be able to live. We want to be able to return to where we are from, that these invasions stop, and the bombings, and that they respect the people, respect the children, respect everyone. What the North American politicians don't understand is that their borders will be more secure if they have stable neighbors, if they have neighbors who have resolved in large measure their internal problems, but they have to resolve them through peace and without impositions.